Excuse me. Welcome, all ye Whovians, to my channel again. Not many people have watched my other videos on Doctor Who. I don't know why. I have to say that I'm not just talking about my top 10 of the different classic Doctors. I'm also discussing the show in generally, or in entirety even, with special reference. And this video is as its focal point, the top 10 Tom Baker stories, my top 10 Tom Baker stories, who was the fourth Doctor. He was the most popular Doctor, one of the most popular Doctors so far, including the new ones. And I think the reason is that he made the show fun, even more fun than it was before. It was already fun before, but Tom Baker made it even more fun. And he was able to act in the drama with seriousness and all the other things that actors do in dramas. Now, I haven't included in my top 10. I haven't included anything in the from the last season of Tom Baker's, because as far as I'm concerned, as I said before, the show changed so much under the new regime with John Nathan Turner and his crew that that the Doctor Who world or universe, the Whoniverse, if you like, was transferred to a parallel universe. There was such a different look and a different policy as regards story, and everything changed. Everything changed, which weakened Tom Baker's performance. But that's not why I'm not choosing anything from that era. There are some good stories from it, but I'm going to talk about that one in my next Doctor Who video, when I focus on Peter Davison's stories. But I mean, Full Circle's got great science fiction concept, and so some of the other ones. Now, but I won't go on into that any further. There's a total change in the show, which lasted until the end of Sylvester McCoy's time as the Doctor. With the TV movie, the original Whoniverse was re-established. Excuse me, an antivirus thing has just come up on my screen. I can't see a damn thing for it. Gone. No. I'm going to surprise everyone with my top 10 Tom Bakers. I'm not including Genesis of the Daleks, which is obviously required watching for any Whovian or any anyone who likes sci-fi, drama, or anyone who likes television, perhaps even. Because, in short, I don't like how it was done. There are too many Nazi tropes or memes in it for my liking. It could have been done much better. But everything else was great, of course. It had some of the greatest moments in Doctor Who, and it's an essential story. But I'm not including it because I do prefer some other stories to it, some other programmes to it. Hats off to The Ark in Space, which I think is a cracking story. And it was a kind of toss-up between that and The Brain of Morbius. But I chose the more classic story. I think Brain of Morbius is the more classic story, and especially the visual of it was especially good. Also to Invasion of Time, which I think is great, especially with Tom Baker's acting in that, when he had to play the Doctor being controlled by the aliens, or semi-controlled by the aliens, struggling against it all the time, having to suppress his thoughts. So that's another one. And there are all sorts of other stories. There are crap ones, I think, like The Invisible Enemy. Even that had some great moments. But I think the Fantastic Voyage idea of injecting little people into people's bloodstreams or into brain cavities or whatever is too silly, too implausible. I mean, how would they breathe, for example? walking around in someone's breath. There's no air whatsoever. Right, so shall I start? Anything else I want to say? Well, I'll think of it as I go along. But number 10, anyway, is The Brain of Morbius. There it is. Brain of Morbius. I've not included Robot either, which is a good post-regeneration story. But the robot is a little bit Woolworths toy, overgrown Woolworths toy-ish. Though it is a very practical robot. It's also like the Lost in Space character, Robbie the Robot. But anyway, Brain of Morbius. Sit on the planet Karn, windswept Karn with a Frankenstein theme, which I think was a feature of, was it Philip Hinchcliffe? Philip Hinchcliffe, yeah. Feature of Philip Hinchcliffe's time as producer was to kind of borrow from established Gothic horror. And this one has a nice parallel with Frankenstein, though as is with all Doctor Who, it's changed nicely. It's different enough. It's by no means a pinch, really. Thing is about Doctor Who is that all these Whovians, I know they're perfectionists. I'm not such a perfectionist as many of the Whovians. They have all sorts of critical, do a lot of criticising and pretty stringent analysis of Doctor Who. But as far as I'm concerned, as soon as the show started, it became, no matter what the material was like or the content of the story was like, it became a cut above other, not only other TV sci-fi, but a cut above a great majority of movies and even novels, because of the characters of the Doctor and the concept of the TARDIS, and of course various geniuses who came in, who were concerned with the show. Well, this video is mostly about the genius called Tom Baker, of course. Then we have it, Brain of Morbius. I won't go too much into the plot details. I don't want to do what they call spoilers over much, though I might do if I get enthusiastic. You know, if I might talk a lot about the story. But Brain of Morbius, Planet Karn, resurrecting a villainous Time Lord, one of the Doctor's own race, called Morbius, this Frankenstein character, played brilliantly by one of the great actors as far as I'm concerned. Do you know what? I've forgotten his name again. What's his name again? Yes. Oh, yeah, Philip Maydock, that's right. Philip Maydock, of course, was in the Peter Cushing film of the Dalek Invasion of Earth, the Amicus film, as the Black Marketeer guy. He didn't play the Black Marketeer guy in the TV series, but this is one of his finest roles in Doctor Who. He also, and each time he's in anything, he's entirely different. He's such a good actor. He's a brilliant character actor, and he was great as the War Chief in the War Games, and he was great in this, and he was even good in The Power of Kroll, though he wasn't as great, I thought, but he was playing a rather diffident character. But anyway, steals the show. They all steal the show. Elizabeth Sladen's great. Tom Baker's as great as usual. The Sisters of Karn are great little witches, and great atmospheric setting on the planet Karn. Probably done in a studio. There were a lot of rocks around. Maybe it was a combination of both. Location and studio, I don't know. Anyway, Brain of Morbius, number 10. Put that down there. Number 9, I've got Nightmare of Eden, which is one which gets knocked, at least in recent times, But the fun content of this show is great. And the theme of drug abuse is something which I found interesting. I like the satire or the realistic theming. There's a drug which is being smuggled in space called Vraxoin, and of course it's like heroin. It's a straight reference to heroin and heroin addiction. It just destroys lives, and Tom Baker it shows again what a great doctor he is. In a lot of fun moments, but he's very serious about the drug abuse, as is Romana too, played by Lalla Ward. And the cinematic element is done very well with the spaceships colliding, kind of sticking together. There's an interesting sci-fi concept of preservation of parts of worlds in crystals and electronic impulses in crystals, but which you can essentially walk into and become and actually live on the planet. But I won't go too far into that. Right, and the doctor foils the drug smuggler's plans, of course, when he finds out the source of the drug. Right. Nightmare of Eden. K9's put to good use in that as well. Robot Dog. Next one. A very famous one, this, that everyone loves. Horror of Fang Rock, introducing the Rutans. The enemies of the Sontarans. It's the only story with the Rutans in the classic TV series. They appear in various spin-off videos. And I suppose in some of the novels as well. I don't know. As for the audio adventures, I'm not sure. I don't think I've heard one with I've got a big collection of the audio adventures of Doctor Who, but I don't think I've got any with the Rutans in. Some with the Sontarans in, yes. But this is one of those dark stories, but stories which are done very convincingly. And the characters are very convincing. They're a little bit stereotypical. I'm not sure whether it's Victoriana or early 20th century people. But you've got the social classes, English social classes, all marooned on a lighthouse, and this Rutan crashes nearby, and there are all kinds of cunning attempts to essentially, I think, exterminate everyone on the lighthouse, and all the characters sort of die one at a time, but they're all lovable characters, and the drama's really good. Turin Stick's story. Turin Stick's one of my favourite writers of Doctor Who. Here we have it. Horror of Fang Rock. Leela, the Savage, who we once remarked was found floating down the Amazon in a hat box. Of course, she was really a denizen of the planet. Which was on the story, or the program, The Face of Evil. She was one of the savage people. Humanity had been split into two, savages and these kind of technocrats. And this mad computer was... I haven't included that one, but it's another one to hats off to. There's so many good stories and great programs on Doctor Who at this period. And the next one is another very well-loved one, and it's Pyramids of Mars. Now, just to digress a little bit, what I mentioned before about the show changing so much at the beginning of Tom Baker's last season, and that trend carried on until the show was cancelled when Sylvester McCoy played the Doctor. One reason for my belief that we're talking about a different Doctor Who altogether Doctor Who in a parallel Earth, or parallel universe rather, is the script incontinuities which were occurring during that time. The most controversial one is the unit timeline. Now, in Pyramids from Mars, the Doctor and Sarah Jane land in, or drawn off course to early 20th century Earth in a manor house which was going to become Unit HQ decades in the future, of course. And at one point, Sarah Jane told one of the other characters, people that lived nearby, that she was from 1980. Now, this broadcast program story was broadcast, I think, in 1977. Let's have a look. What did it say? 1975, actually. Broadcast in 1975. And it was quite clear before that, when John Pertwee landed on the Earth, he didn't land in 1970, which is when the Spearhead from Space was broadcast. Him and the unit family started later on in the 70s, late in the 70s. It's quite clear that it was sometime in the future. There were telltale signs like video phones, for example. It's something which I always imagined in sci-fi, but you didn't have them in those days. When there was a mission to Mars, which I don't think we've had now yet, but it was something which was imagined often to be in the future. But anyway, in the next run of Doctor Who, under John Nathan Turner and the other people, there was a story in which the Brigadier, they meet the Brigadier again, or the Doctor meets the Brigadier again, and he'd retired in 1977, which is, I think, when the no, it was just a few years after the Terror of the Zygons story, which could only have happened in around 1979 or even 1980. But anyway, the unit timeline, and there are other inconsistencies like that, including silly costumes. In the TV movie, Sylvester McCoy actually looked as though he could be Doctor Who instead of just a guy in a silly costume. I'm not saying that they were bad. I enjoyed them, but you have to make a very positive and make an effort to shift in a conscious, shift one's consciousness in order for me to enjoy that era of Doctor Who. But this is the old era, and Pyramids of Mars, one of the great villains, Sutekh, an all-powerful alien who the Egyptians regarded as a god, along with his brothers, or his brother and the other Osirians, imprisoned in a pyramid on Earth, and he's imprisoned by a power that's emanating from a pyramid on Mars, and of course he plans to cut a long story short, to destroy the pyramid and destroy the power source, and then escape, and after which, of course, he would turn around and start destroying planets. He destroyed all life wherever he found it. Tom Baker and Liz Sladen are great in this as the Doctor, and Sarah Jane Smith. Great acting. Right, Pyramids of Mars. Great dramatic story. Again, another appropriation of horror. The mummies, who, as it was Doctor Who, of course, turn out to be robots. Right. Now, the next one's got to be a big surprise. No one's ever done this before. far as I know. They start picking at the Key to Time series, rating all the different stories and ranking them. But I have decided that I'm going to put them all together as a great back-to-back watch. I'm not criticising, like some people do, the Key to Time concept. I think it's very well handled. There you have 6 stories, all in one box set here, Key to Time, with wonderful Mary Tamm as Romana, the first actress to play Romana, followed by Lalla Ward after this season. All wonderful stories. There isn't a bad story really, and there's nothing to let it down. Some are better than others, yeah. I'm a big fan of the Rebus operation, especially. But the entire season's great. There's a consistent quality, and there's this great story arc with Key to Time. And it's interesting how each disguised key that the Doctor goes in search of is disguised in an entirely different and unique way. And a couple of them are big surprises. So I won't tell you about those in case you haven't watched these yet. Most people will have, of course, if they're watching this channel. And the wonderful bloke that wrote the Douglas Adams wrote the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and had great success with that. After this, he was the script editor on this and wrote one of the stories and helped to write some of the others. The Pirate Planet, which is recognisable Adams in many ways because it's just off the wall with science fiction concept. It's just totally incredible. Some great characters. An interesting character towards the end, another Time Lord called Drax. It was quite comic. He's a great counterpoint to the Doctor. He's not a villainous one, but he does turn out to be villainous later in his life in the audio adventures of Doctor Who. But in this, he's a lovable character, and he helps the Doctor and Romana defeat the Black Guardian and his servants. He has one main servant called the Shadow. Right, so that's the Key to Time series as one watch. So that's it's number 5, I think, isn't it? Right, number 6. Number 5 is one of the required things as far as I'm concerned, and it's the Shada Experience, or just Shada. I'm calling it the Shada Experience because there are 3 or 4 different ways in which it can be experienced. This story can be experienced. First of all, there's a story starring Paul McGann in it instead of Dr. Tom Baker, but I'll discount that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to hear it. I'm not sure that I think it's just a radio play, but I don't really want to hear that. Oh, has it got Phil Dessa McCoy in it? But anyway, I don't really want to see that. I think I'd find it confusing. But also there's a version with the surviving footage. BBC technician strike or studio strike had prevented the team from completing the filming for Shada. It was never broadcast. And so they only had some filmed scenes from it. And another version of Shada that you can get, which I got on VHS, involved Tom Baker, who was stood in this Doctor Who museum, sort of wandering about, commenting on the different monsters that were portrayed there. And he was filling in the gaps with the narration, filling in the gaps with the narration. But this is even better. This is the animated version. It has the original scenes, and it has colour animation to fill in the gaps. And all the actors came in, and read through the script and performed the script just for this production with animation. including Tom Baker and Lalla Ward, of course. And this is a great story, another Douglas Adams story, in which another Time Lord, another lovable one, called Professor Chronotis, who's even older than the Doctor. He's supposed to be retired. He's living as a professor at Cambridge, and it turns out, I hope this isn't much of a spoiler, that his TARDIS is actually his college room that he lives in and has all his books in. And the villain comes, what's his name, Skagra, and he's after one of the Professor's books, which happens to be an artifact from Gallifrey, which can open Sharda, which is a Time Lord prison. And the story concerns all that. Great comic moments with the Doctor, with the Professor and Lalla. A couple of typical students get involved. They're the sort that you straight away think are types of student, a girl and a boy, or a man and a woman. And they're great in it as well. So that's it, Sharda, which is number 5. My 5th favourite Doctor Who story. Excuse me, I must drink some tea. I hope I'm making sense here. When I've got a dry mouth, people can't hear what I'm saying sometimes. Right. Number 4. My 4th favourite. Comes as no surprise, it's a much beloved story. The Victoriana one. Talons of Weng-Chiang, in which Leela is made to wear Victorian women's clothing. I think she feels rather, as she does in Horror of Fang Rock or in similar clothing, she feels rather restricted in it. She can't go around in a loincloth because, as Tom Baker says, she'd frighten the horses. And great time travel story. And the Doctor kind of slips into the role of a Sherlock Holmes. And if it's borrowed from horror at all, some of the concept, it's what's his name, Fu Manchu, the villain in this. Magnus Greel is a time traveller from the future, and he's brought this little Chinese doll that kills people, and he's surrounded by Chinese thugs that do his bidding. And there's been criticisms of this, that it's racist, because the chief Chinaman, Li Sen Chang, who's a magician, performing in some great musical sequences. There's even a song, and one of those compares that comes out with all the like he used to do on the telly. There's a guy on the telly that had a musical show on the telly one time, way back in the 70s, and the guy used to come out with us. Here he is with his lustrous legerdemain, to confound and bewilder all the crowned heads of Europe. Well, that's a line from this, but that's the sort of thing that these compares used to talk like, and all the audience would be going, ooh. So very, very well the setting, and is really well done, and some great characters in Jago and Lightfoot, unlikely companions. One of them's a pathologist, the other one's the manager of the theatre. Of course, the villain is hiding under the theatre, in pretty close to the sewers, if not in the sewers, employing giant rats to keep people out. And but anyway, he's after his time cabinet, which was stolen by the Chinese emperor years before. But I won't go too far into that. Great fun moments, great story. And this terrific, exuberant performance from Tom Baker as Doctor Who, being a Victorian Sherlock Holmes type of guy. Talons of Weng-Chiang. Great sci-fi too. It's a long story, worth watching. The next one though is only a 4-parter, and I think it's so well done that it has to be really high on my list, and I just love it so much. I remember when I first saw it, it was a great mystery story to me. And it's not so much a mystery now, but I still like seeing how it was a mystery and how it plays out, and all the great acting from all the characters. A bit like Horror of Fang Rock, people confined in one place and something nefarious going on. And it's the Robots of Death. Doctor and Leela again on the Sand Miner. On another planet, this Sand Miner is travelling along, extracting mineral wealth from the sand or from some aspect of the planet, and people start getting murdered, and the whole story is like an Agatha Christie in space, in that obviously the robots are actually killing people, but the whodunit part of it is who's been programming them to kill, because robots, of course, are programmed with the 3 prime directives, which is straight left from Asimov, but it's something that's accepted in science fiction circles and even science fact circles, in scientific circles. The 3 precepts that a robot may not ever, by act or omission, harm a human being. The robot's allowed to protect itself unless it conflicts with the first law. And then there's another one. Robot is always, I think it's the robot's always has to obey humans unless it conflicts with the first law again. But there's something like that. I might not have got those right. But the Robots of Death, Isaac Asimov's iRobot in space. I think some of it was in space in Isaac Asimov. But anyway, great story, Robots of Death. Great characters. Wonderfully realised personalities. And the people, and they start dying, and it's Agatha Christie all the way with who is it. And you don't know till the end. If you've never seen it before, you do not know which of the people that live on the Sand Miner has programmed the robots to kill. Quite a surprise. When you see the person, it finally shows him on screen, it's quite a surprise and a great shock. But I won't tell you why it's a shock. It's very shocking. Right, Robots of Death. One of my top 3. The next 2 are interchangeable, really. Most people put one of these 2 at number 1. I've put it at number 2 because recently I've been watching the other one and enjoying it particularly very much. But my number 2, or number 1 if you like, because as I said they're interchangeable, is one of the most famous Doctor Who adventures ever, and it involves cracks in time and the Mona Lisa, and of course it's the City of Death, with the wonderful Julian Glover playing the alien, the one with the Savoy cabbage on his head that has an implausible mask. The only flaw in this story is the mask. It has this human mask that he pulls over this head, which is rather like a cabbage with one eye, and it's Julian Glover. And when he pulls it off, it's this alien Scaroth creature, but it all has to do with time manipulation and a kind of imperative survival story through this alien is trying to survive through time manipulation. But I won't tell you exactly how or what it's about. It's something you've got to see and experience for yourself. And the shots of Paris, a lot of it was filmed on location in Paris. As the character of Duggan, who could easily have become, in fact everyone who watches it thinks, I remember when I first saw it I thought he's got to join the TARDIS crew, this Duggan. He was a bit like Ian Chesterton was in the original Doctor Who. He was a bit of a man of action, he was a detective, exploring weird goings on in the arts world. Teams up with the Doctor. Catherine Schell plays Julian Glover's wife, and the mind boggles her just about how this weird alien manages to have a human wife, but you don't want to think too much about that. So there's a great butler character, who's also an obvious gangster thug, the right-hand man of Julian Glover's character, Count Scalione. He was really Scaroth, the Jaggeroth. So there we have it, City of Death, some great timey-wimey stuff in it. But I've got as number one, and it could have been City of Justice as easily. And this used to be a really big favourite among Whovians, but I think it's waned in popularity. It's received a lot of criticism, but for me it's still one of the best ones, and it's The Sunmakers. Robert Holmes story. Great satire, a dystopia, story of a dystopia set on Pluto, which has been engineered to house humanity. And humanity comprises of a bunch of oppressed workers, some rebels in hiding, and some privileged class types who are a bit comical, but they are a bit. If you read Charles Dickens, you find some of the worst characters extremely comical. This is a bit Dickensian. The collector, the top of the heap collector, because he's not really human, but I won't go into that. And the whole thing where all these workers are conditioned to work for the company that run Pluto, and suffer from being oppressed and not very well paid and so on. Of course, Tom Baker, great performance again, and Leela spearheads the revolution essentially, but there's a lot of arguing and representation of things that you find, especially the using economic measures to oppress. You find in real life taxation, heavy taxation, and apparently Robert Holmes, when he wrote this story, people thought that he meant his taxes were too high. He was peeved about, a bit miffed off about how his taxes were being wrenched from him. But I think he I don't know if he confirmed this. Was the other theory is, it seemed to be more true, is that he was talking about the BBC. What the BBC had against him, I don't know. But there we have it, the Sunmakers. It's called the Sunmakers because there are 6 suns, artificial suns surrounding Pluto, making it habitable for humanity. Excuse me while I have a drink of tea. Now, so that's it. Sunmakers, number 1. Got that's the best one. And to go through them again. Number 1, Sunmakers. Number 2, City of Death. Number 3, Robots of Death. A lot of death in these titles. Number 4, Talons of Weng-Chiang. Talons of Weng-Chiang, criticised for being racist, but I thought, even though the Li Sen-Chang character is played by a European, people criticise it and say that they should have hired an Asian actor. But if it had been racist film or TV, they wouldn't have hired dozens of Chinese actors, which they did. Also performing in the stories program. That was number. What was that number? Number 4. That was number 4. Number 5, Sharda, sometimes referred to as the Sharda Experience. Might be worth checking out other versions of this actually, just for the fun of it. And number 6, the entire Key to Time series. With the risk of sounding ridiculous, of course, entire Key to Time series. But sometimes I just sit down and I watch the entire thing, sometimes over a couple of days, and enjoy it thoroughly. Jousting between the Black and the White Guardian, with the Doctor caught in the middle. And number 7, fantastic Pyramids of Mars, with the all-powerful Sutekh. And number 8, Horror of Fang Rock, brilliant story. The wonderful Adelaide, who faints every 2 minutes, and Leela has to slap her at one point. And Skinsale and Lord Palmer. And number 9, Nightmare of Eden, sci-fi, amazing sci-fi with the drug abuse theme. And last but not least, the wonderful classic Brain of Morbius with Philip Madoc and the Sisterhood of Khan. Philip Madoc plays Solon. Right, so that's my top 10. Tom Baker. Don't know if you'll agree with me. If you don't, but thank you, Whovians, and anybody else who's watching. I like to do Doctor Who videos, and I hope to do more in the future. The next one's got to be Peter Davison, or about Peter Davison, with a mention of the last season of Tom Baker. Tom Baker did so many stories. I think he did more than any other Doctor. He did more episodes than any other Doctor. Closely followed by John Pertwee and William Hartnell, then Patrick Troughton in numbers of episodes I'm talking about. And then, as for Peter Davison next, and the other two, Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, hardly did any episodes at all, though they were great. I'll get to them later. Now, let's see if I can switch this off. Say good night, happy watching. Hope that the soon-to-be broadcast Doctor Who specials with David Tennant will be enjoyed. I'll be watching them. And God bless.